I get a little bit upset looking at all these pictures on social media of Rangers sitting in classrooms. You know, Rangers shouldn't be sitting in classrooms. They should be doing stuff, and take pictures of them shooting rockets or shooting on a range or playing in the mud or something.
Hello and greetings, Northwest Royal Rangers. My name is David Schmidt. I'll be your host again. I am the Northwest Regional Training Coordinator, and today I have a very special guest with you. And we are actually not in the Northwest region today. We're in beautiful Zionsville, Pennsylvania, here for National and Advanced Academy. And our special guest is Sol Greear. He is the National Training Aide here. Welcome, Sol.
Hi, David. Good to be with you.
Well, thanks for taking all the time out here today to be able to hop on the show with you.
He's the man. He's the man.
We've got some other special guests. Commander Jake Killen here. He's our Northwest Regional Coordinator.
Everyone.
We got another sneak in the background who we'll grab later on too.
Okay. Let me know.
Paul Schaefer. We'll see him later on in the next episode. But we thank you for joining on here, Sol, and taking your time out before you go back home to the beautiful state of Georgia. And go ahead.
God's country.
That's right. That is right. Well, tell us a little bit what's it like down there in Georgia compared to the weather here this weekend.
I felt like I was going backwards in time about a month. We've had 80s and 90s already. Maria, the cook, told me that it's been unusually cool here, and she was getting cold at night. And I said, we had, oatmeal for breakfast the other morning. And it was the grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. And I said, this is a great winter lunch. It's my favorite. And she said, it's felt like winter this week, hadn't it? I said, it's felt like winter ever since I got here. Because the highs have been in the 60s, maybe 70. So it's a little bit different. So we did have a spring this year, which is unusual for Georgia. It usually goes from winter to summer with no spring, maybe a day or two. But this year we actually had a spring, so it was nice. I kind of hated to leave.
Yeah, it's a little bit different from the weather up in the Northwest where I am. It's always very dry in the Spokane area versus here. You can actually smell a little bit of some moisture in there, and it's really beautiful too.
Some of my family is from the western side of the mountains around Seattle and Tacoma. So what I'm used to when I go to Washington State is a lot of rain. And I did the first NRMC in Washington, whenever it was, in Mount Rainier, and it rained the whole time. Maybe not downpours, but rain.
Oh yeah, yep, definitely happens over there quite a bit. So how'd you get involved in Royal Rangers, Sol?
My first involvement was as a dad. We were in a Pentecostal Holiness Church at Fayetteville, North Carolina, and they recruited one of my sons, and he just loved it, couldn't get enough of it. The other son was a little bit too young at the time. He was in Ranger Kids, but he didn't have the opportunity to do some of the active stuff. And then from there I went back to Germany. I was in the Army at the time, and when I came back, to make a long story short, I was looking for a new church, and I found an Assemblies Church in Peachtree City, Georgia, and we started an outpost. Two of us got together and started an outpost. And the rest is history. That was in 94.
I was a straight arrow that year.
Thanks.
Well, that's awesome.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. That's great. You've been serving for so long and been a valuable part to our ministry, helping the boys. Did you find that your prior military service made it a little bit of an easier transition to be a vital leader in the program?
After 22 years, I left the Army thinking, I'm never going to have to wear a uniform or sleep on the ground again. Wrong.
Nope.
God's sense of humor kicks in. He said, never tell me never. So I did a lot of exciting things. It's not really a comparison, because Rangers is all about winning souls of boys. And the Army is all about defending our country. And usually that means creating mindless violence at the risk of life and limb. So the training, and it's adult men you're training, not boys. So there's a distinct difference. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to remember that difference. Drop and give me 10 and all that kind of stuff just doesn't work with 5 and 6 year olds. So it took some adjustment, but I love being around kids. I've always kind of had a heartthrob for kids, especially boys. And so when I left the Army, I had planned to become a youth pastor. Unfortunately, my wife of the time left us, and so the kids and I were on our own for about 10 years, and not many churches want a divorced youth pastor. So I became a teacher, a school teacher, and I taught in the public schools for 13 years.
Yeah, and I used to be a teacher too in the public schools, and I found for me with Royal Rangers, it was very great to be able to use those skills for in the classroom, both on the outpost or if you're doing leadership training itself. It really was a great way to provide structure for helping out with the boys and get a better feel, better transition to someone coming without having that experience.
It is the things you learn as a teacher about classroom management and discipline do apply, and there is a crosswalk between the two. The difference being, though, I get a little bit upset looking at all these pictures on social media of Rangers sitting in classrooms. Rangers shouldn't be sitting in classrooms. They should be doing stuff, and take pictures of them shooting rockets or shooting on a range or playing in the mud or something. It's a little bit discerning to me that after what I've learned in Rangers about keeping boys are active. They want to be doing things. And the subject I liked to teach the most while I was a public school teacher, even though I wasn't certified, I liked to teach science, middle school science, because we could go do things. And the principal got mad at me because I was never in my classroom. We were always in the parking lot measuring the difference between the temperature of the ground on the asphalt and the temperature of the ground on the grass and stuff like that. And or we were in the creek down behind the school. He got really mad at that because there was a lot of poison ivy down there.
I better hope you took your Adventures in Camping handbook.
No, but I kept it in mind. It was a good time. I had a lot of fun with that. It was alternative school, and contrary to popular belief, we did have girls, and they aren't all bad kids. A lot of the kids are really, really smart. In fact, most of them were too smart for their teachers, and they couldn't figure out how to keep them busy. So the kids are going to find something to do. Boys are boys, and if they're not doing something, they're going to find something and get in trouble usually. Yeah. So that was my favorite subject.
That's awesome. We spoke about this weekend. Live the adventure, and you really have that mindset right down with that, with how boys want to be active. They want to get out there, feel the outdoors, or whether it's in the classroom if you're loving science experiments, or whether it's something you want to go learn about, taking astronomy to the sky later on that night. It's great that we offer all those options now for the boys to be able to go through that.
It is great that we offer all those options. It is kind of a challenge for commanders because they can't be experts in all those options. They might be experts in one or two, but the thing is, there's somebody in your church who is. He might not be a doctor of science or whatever, but it's going to be his hobby or something. That's right. So you ask him, can you kind of help me out? And that's kind of the way when I came back from Panama, how I got back involved was our pastor came to me and said, well, I want to start a ranger outpost. Can you help me out? And I had no idea. I didn't, I knew how it worked for my son when he was in, but I didn't know anything about running the program myself. So it was kind of a education.
Yeah, that's great. Like you mentioned, whether we're not the expert in ourselves, we can go ahead and teach ourselves, the hear, see, do, teach method we were speaking about. But also, why not get that content expert, even if they're not involved in the program on a weekly night? Have them come and show up and, go ahead and let's have you teach one lesson of rocketry. And, boys always love to see a new face around them. And then when that person's on there next week, oh, where's so-and-so? And it's like, yeah, come on.
Since I've been helping out with Virtual Outposts, I've learned that we can do almost anything that's in the book. We have done almost everything that a DR can do. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that we haven't been able to teach. But it's fun to take a guy who's really not interested in boys, but he is interested in model trains, let's say. And you just ask him, can you come to one meeting? Come help me out with this one thing. And that's all you need to do, because the boys will recruit him. Mm-hmm. You know, you just get him there to do his one hobby thing, and the boys do actually it's God doing the work through the Holy Spirit, through the boys, using the boys as tools to get them hooked. Every commander I've ever recruited was recruited in that way.
Yeah, that's really something. You know, for me, I grew up through Rangers as a boy and took a few roles for college and life, and come back into the program. I approached the senior commander of my outpost. I was like, I'd like to get involved in Rangers. What do I need to do to get involved here? And he's like, wait, you're coming to me to help out?
Yeah, that almost always happens.
So as far as being the National Training Aide, how did you come about to be in that leadership position, and how can we best support you as National Training Aide?
Well, I'll answer the last question first, prayer. I got involved because my best friend in Augusta and I were about the same age. I was a little bit older, but we had about the same age of kids. So we were kind of raising our families together in our church. And we were doing Rangers together. Mm. And he started getting promoted to different positions of authority in Rangers. And it was the same thing like I told you about. You just bring somebody along with you from the church. And that's what he did to me. He just brought me along with him. He became eventually he applied and became the National Training Coordinator. That was Perry Siddle. Mm. And I loved work. I loved the man. We had done a lot of camps together. He was my favorite camp director. His favorite question was always, what's for dessert?
That's an important question.
Well, it is an important question, but for breakfast? But and we're hiking the AT, so, you know, we can't exactly take ice cream.
Yeah, that'd be a real...
It was challenging for me. I'm not really a detailed planner like that. I'm more of a strategy, big picture person. But we did get to do 2 national canoe expeditions and a national training trails together. And then after he passed, we did the last national training trails in North Georgia in the mountains on the AT.
And it's got to be a beautiful area of North Georgia to do that.
It is gorgeous. We hiked the same trail that we had hiked the 4 or 5 years before. And it's just, in the fall especially, it's really pretty. You can see trees have fallen, the leaves have fallen off the trees, so you can really see. But it brings back painful memories.
Yeah. Wow. No, it sounds like he was really almost like a mentor for you.
He was. That's how I got talked into going to NTC Academy, Advanced Academy. Of course, one academy was in 2001 when we were on our way and got told to go home, and that was disappointing because
I heard something about that. What can you tell us more about that?
We were en route. Perry was going to serve on staff. I was going as a trainee. He had already finished Advanced Academy, and I'm not sure what his role is going to be there, but might not be getting my dates right or something. But anyway, we had packed up. I'd done all my homework, gotten all ready for this. In those days, you had to make the full-size hand or long-handled axe, and you had to make a training pocket knife that was big enough to
out of the wood.
Out of wood, yeah. And it was a lot of hard work because I'm not really wood shop person. So, but we had all that stuff packed in the car, and we were headed up, and Perry got a call. I says, we're canceling it because of the 9/11.
Wow.
So we just turned around and went back home.
Oh my goodness,
that was going to be in Heartland camp in the middle of Ohio.
And that would have been some experience to go through. Like you're all prepared, you got the training ready to go, and you know not only you can't go to the camp, but then to just hear that as an American is.
Yeah, that was That was painful. That was very painful.
What was the?
So you mentioned your mentorship. How did that affect you and your personal life outside of Royal Rangers? So what effect did that have on you?
9/11?
Your mentorship.
Oh, he was my accountability partner. Whenever I started feeling uncomfortable about a situation, as a teacher, you sometimes get into these uncomfortable positions, and I could talk to him about any of them, and whenever I started getting tempted by porn or anything like that, I could always talk with Perry, and he was my rock. I could go to him anytime. We used to call each other when we went out to Springfield or Eagle Rock. We'd meet someplace like Birmingham and drive from there together. Mm. But on the way home, what would happen is we'd come back to Birmingham and then we'd split up. Well, he still had 3 or 4 hours to go. And I can remember coming back with a van full of boys, and about 2 o'clock in the morning we got back to the church, and so we split up, went our separate ways, and Perry looked at the boy that was going to be riding in the front seat and said, "Your job is to make sure Commander Sol stays awake, because he falls asleep when he drives at night." And so the boy says, "Yes, sir, Commander Perry, I'll take care of it. I'll make sure he stays awake." He was asleep before we got out of the parking lot.
Of course.
So that was a struggle to get on. And Birmingham's in the mountains. So as soon as we left the city, I drove into fog that was so dense you couldn't see the markings on the road.
Oh boy!
So it was a test.
Yes, it's great that you mentioned that, because I know I've heard Commander Carl speak many times about how accountability partners, and you mentioned this week in iron sharpening iron.
Right.
Whenever we get together as leaders, being able to we may have some conflicts, but being able to have that drive, that sharp and that fine edge on that blade, really is what it's about here as leaders, and why we get together and build and form those relationships as leaders.
One of the things about conflict is that's how we hold each other accountable. Sometimes you got to challenge each other on issues. You see something you don't quite understand or agree with, don't keep it to yourself. Go to the guy and in private, don't make a big public scene. Go to the guy in private and say, "I don't understand this. Why are we doing it this way?" There's a video I watched about a commander in Florida who had a boy come to him and tell him that he had $1 stolen. Well, the commander overreacted. They were about to eat supper, so he sent all the boys to their rooms. Well, first he said something like, I'm basing this based on what I saw on YouTube. First he says, somebody's lost $1 or had $1 stolen. If whoever took it comes forward now, we won't punish them. So no boy is going to come forward in that situation.
Oh no.
So he sent them all to their rooms, and then he interrogated all the boys that were in the same room with that boy that lost $1 had the $1 stolen. And so one of his commanders went to him and said, "I don't think this is the way to handle this," because what he wound up doing was letting the commanders eat dinner, but kept the boys in their rooms for like 2 or 3 hours.
Oh wow!
So by the time they got to eat, how hot do you think their food was? So I've had that experience as a teacher, as a ranger commander, as a soldier, where somebody comes and says that, David took my Leatherman. Well, the question isn't who took David's Leatherman. The question is, are you sure?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Asking the right questions.
Yeah, you got to ask the right questions in the right way of the right guy. So, the guy's coming and giving you this report, you ask him, how do you know that? And then if he says, well, he took it last time. Now maybe he just borrowed it and forgot to ask,
What happened to assuming good intent?
Yeah, exactly. So the next step would be something like, if you haven't checked, whether you've checked or not, I don't care. I want you to go and check every single pocket of your book bag, your backpack, your pants, your shorts, your whatever. I want you to come back and tell me when you've done that you've checked everywhere there is. Every time that's happened to me, the person has come back and said, so I found it.
Yeah. And they're just kind of like, oh.
And then if they ever start to think, well, David took it. Well, how do you know David took it? They don't know David took it. They just think he took it because they had a bad experience before.
Yeah, human nature just takes right over.
Yeah. And it happens to me. I live in a family where Janice and I were both single parents for a long time for her, 12-something years. I was about 10 years. But two of our daughters live real close to us, and they're always coming over. The grandkids always come over. And I can't help it, but whenever something comes up missing, where'd that go? Oh, Aaron must have borrowed it. It's just, I get upset with myself because I know that she probably didn't. I probably just moved it and forgot where I put it.
That's yeah.
It's like whenever you go camping, you're always trying to keep up with stuff, and you don't. Nobody's going to take it. You misplace it. It's much more likely than somebody taking your pocket knife or whatever.
Yeah, as we say out on the East Coast, those are fighting words.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, Sol, it's been great hanging out with you here. I have one question I'd like to ask all the leaders here that come on the podcast with us. And so, as a Ranger commander starting out, especially yourself getting involved in Royal Rangers, what do you know now that you wish you would have known then getting started as a commander?
If I had one thing to say, the most important part or aspect of our ministry are the boys. Whatever we do, we have to keep focused on the boys. There was a story of, I think it was Tennessee district director who, on his entrance sign to powwow, would always have the same slogan. It's all about the boys. But the part that helped, I mean, that's where our focus is. But the part that's helped me the most is being here with you. You know, whether it's Academy or NRMC, whatever it is, it's being with other men, like you were saying earlier. Iron sharpens iron, and that's what's kept me on the straight and narrow and involved. You know, I'm starting to get to the point where I have to ask myself. It's like the backpacking trips. You know, you can't do those forever.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, your body is going to give up.
We're not young and spry like Jake. All right, Jake.
Proceed.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when you're being beat up on.
Well, since you're here, Jake, I just asked Sol our podcast question. So, as a commander now versus when you got started in Royal Rangers, what is one thing you wish you knew when you got started as a Ranger commander that you know now?
Patience. Patience for the boys, patience for the leaders. We're all at different levels, but we're all trying to achieve the same goal.
I have to add patience for the parents.
Patience for the parents.
Some parents are truly helicopter parents, and they don't want their boy. We heard a report today about some boy's mom doesn't even want him to touch a knife. Okay, how do you learn toolcraft? Or how do you go camping without a pocket knife? I mean, when I grew up, I don't know about Jake or you guys, but when I grew up, I always had a pocket knife, even at school. It was no big deal. But now you can get in big trouble for having a pocket knife at school.
Yeah, or in the airport if you go through them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't tell you how many of those little...
Remember that, Jake? Check your pockets going home tonight.
Right.
How many of these little keychain pocket knives have I lost going through the airport?
Right.
And they're not cheap.
No.
You know, they used to be pretty, reasonable, $5 or $6, but now they're like 15 or something. I don't want to give up any more pocket knives. The other thing about guys love action. And my sweet wife, when she was a single mom, told herself that she was never going to let Josh play with guns. As toys, even toy soldiers were out of the question. So one morning at breakfast, she looks over at the breakfast table, and Josh is chewing
Got
on
another one.
We got another special guest here.
chewing on a piece of bread into the shape of a gun. So that's just boys. We love things that shoot.
Boys will be boys, yeah.
We love things that shoot.
Well, Northwest Rural Ranger family, thanks for joining us here again, another episode of the podcast with our special guest, Sol Greear, and Jake Hill, and a couple others you've seen in the background as well. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here.